Hi, Mrs. Strep, what brings you and Scarlett into the office today?
I'm really concerned about Scarlett. Scarlett has been running a fever over the past 4 days, and is complaining of stomach pains. I've also noticed a rash over her stomach and arms that seems to be spreading.
Have you been able to measure her temperature at home?
Yes, I have. The highest her temperature has been is 101 degrees.
Did you measure her temperature orally or rectally?
Physician assistant Gabe. Of course it was an oral temperature. I use the thermometer when I'm sick too. Gross.
It's okay, Mrs. Strep. It appears as though my medical assistant measured her temperature in the office, and she is currently running a fever. When you noticed she had a fever at home, did you give her anything for it?
Yes, I have been alternating Tylenol and ibuprofen every 5 hours since I first noticed her fever.
Okay, great. Has she been able to tolerate food or fluids at all over the past few days?
No, she hasn't. She is complaining of stomach pain all over her belly, and it began when her fever started. She hasn't wanted to eat or drink anything since this time.
Has Scarlett had any nausea, vomiting, or diarrhea to accompany her stomach pains?
Scarlett hasn't had any vomiting or diarrhea, but she has been complaining of nausea. The nausea started about 2 days ago, and this is when I noticed that she stopped eating.
Okay, Mrs. Strep. Thank you for giving me that information. I still have a few more questions that will really help me to hone in on a possible diagnosis for Scarlett. I heard you mention that she has a rash. Can you please tell me a little more about that?
Sure. She has had this rash that started on her lower back, but then we noticed after a few hours it disappeared. Then later on that evening, Scarlett was complaining of hip and shoulder pain, so I gave her a heating pad to attempt to relieve the pain. However, we noticed that the rash got worse and spread to the areas under the heating pad. The rash doesn't seem to stay for long, and it never spread to her face. It appears to be pretty localized to her trunk, shoulders, and hips.
Did Scarlett ever complain of the rash being itchy?
No, she never did say that. It just always looked weird, like a snake pattern, if that makes sense?
Yes, it does make sense. You mentioned that her shoulder and hips were sore. Can you tell me a little more about that?
I don't really know. She just complained of being icky all over, especially both of her shoulders and hips. That's why I tried alternating the Tylenol and ibuprofen, however neither seemed to be working. The only thing I do know is that she kept saying that she felt like she couldn't walk or move her arms very well. When I took a look at her hips and shoulders, they looked like they were a little swollen and red, but other than that, I didn't really notice anything.
Okay, I feel like I have a good clinical understanding of her presentation. I have a suspicion that she might have rheumatic fever. Tell me, has she had a sore throat within the past 5 weeks?
Yeah, actually she has. I had to pick her up early from school about 1 month ago because she had such a bad sore throat.
Did you ever take her to the doctor to have her sore throat treated?
No, I thought it was just her allergies acting up. I gave her Benadryl at night, I had her gargle salt water, and I gave her cough drops. She also had a bit of a fever, but it seemed to resolve on its own. Why is this important?
Well, I had an idea from the signs and symptoms that you described that Scarlett may have a disease known as rheumatic fever. You mentioned the characteristic rash, which is best described as erythema marginatum. This rash is typically described as a pink rash that is transient, never affecting the face, and worsens with heat. You also described classic polyarthritis, which is where multiple large joints of the upper and lower extremities are affected by pain, swelling, and loss of movement. Typically this disease is also accompanied by stomach pains, weight loss, and fever. A recent sore throat is common in rheumatic fever, and given her history and other symptoms, I'm confident in beginning the workup for rheumatic fever.
Okay, what does the testing entail?
We are going to do some lab work, based off of her preliminary results for meeting the Jones criteria, which is specific to rheumatic fever. The Jones criteria require the presence of 2 major or 1 major and 2 minor criteria for the diagnosis. Scarlett meets the major diagnostic criteria of polyarthritis and erythema marginatum, and the minor diagnostic criteria of fever and arthralgia. The lab work that we will order are EKG, anti-streptolysin, AB titer, ESR, CBC, and a CMP.
Oh my gosh, that sounds serious. Did I do something wrong? Am I a bad mother?
No, not at all. Please don't think that, Mrs. Strep. Rheumatic fever is a systemic illness that is principally a disease of childhood. It may occur following a pharyngitis that is caused by the bacteria known as group A beta hemolytic strep. Rheumatic fever is believed to be an autoimmune response, meaning that it is manifested by our own body. However, the exact reason for the disease remains unclear. In a small percent of patients, infection leads to rheumatic fever several weeks after a sore throat has resolved.
Okay, so it's not my fault?
No, it is not. However, we do need to initiate treatment quickly with Scarlett, so that this doesn't progress to rheumatic heart disease, which is associated with valve insufficiency, heart failure, pericarditis, and even at its worst, death. Therefore, in order to get her treated properly and quickly, I need to know if Scarlett has an aspirin or penicillin allergy.
No, she doesn't.
Okay, so let's get Scarlett started immediately on a prescription for penicillin V for the strep throat infection, and then let's follow it with ibuprofen for her joint pain. This should clear all of her symptoms and prevent her from progressing into rheumatic heart disease, but I would still like to see Scarlett again in a few days to make sure she is progressing as she should be.
Okay, that sounds good, physician assistant Gabe. We will make an appointment with the medical assistant.
Okay, that sounds great. I will see you next time. Bye.
Okay, thank you. Bye.